The wind cut through Red Hollow like broken glass. Evelyn Mercer stood on the wooden platform they'd built for the bride selection, her boots soaked through, her fingers numb inside worn gloves that had more holes than fabric. Behind her, 8 children huddled together, the oldest nearly 16, the youngest barely 5. And every single one of them looked at her like she could still fix this disaster. She couldn't. Evelyn was 37 years old, and she'd already buried 2 husbands. The first died of cholera when she was 23, leaving her with 3 babies and a pile of medical debt. The second died 4 years ago when his horse threw him into a fence post, snapping his neck so cleanly the undertaker said he probably didn't feel anything. That was supposed to be comforting. It wasn't. Now she had 8 children, no money, no home, and exactly one choice: stand on this platform in front of the entire town and hope some man would take a chance on damaged goods. The mayor cleared his throat, uncomfortable with the whole situation. Gentlemen, this is Mrs. Evelyn Mercer, recently arrived from Kansas. Widow, experienced homemaker, 8 children, ages 5 through 15. Someone in the crowd laughed. Not loud, not cruel exactly, but loud enough that Evelyn heard it. Loud enough that Caleb, her oldest, went rigid beside her. "Shut up," Caleb muttered, too quiet for anyone but his siblings to hear. "Just shut up." "Caleb?" Evelyn's voice was flat, empty of everything except exhaustion. "Don't. They're laughing at you." "I know." The first man stepped forward. Thomas Brennan, a wheat farmer with kind eyes and 300 acres outside town. He looked at Evelyn, then at the children, then back at Evelyn. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said quietly. I don't think I can manage that many. I'm real sorry." He walked away. Evelyn didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there while the wind tore through her coat and her daughter Nora pressed closer against her leg. The second man didn't even make it to the platform. He took one look at the lineup of children and shook his head, turning back toward the saloon without a word. "This is humiliating," Jonah hissed. He was 13, skinny and furious, with their father's dark eyes and their mother's stubborn jaw. "We shouldn't even be here. We should have stayed in Kansas." "And starved?" Lydia shot back. She was 12, practical to the point of cruelty sometimes. "Great plan, Jonah. Both of you. Quiet." Evelyn's voice didn't rise, but it landed hard enough that both children went silent. The third man was older, maybe 50, with a limp and a farm he'd inherited from his parents. He studied Evelyn like she was livestock, his gaze moving from her face to her hands to the children arranged behind her, like she was trying to sell them in bulk. "How's your health?" he asked. "Fine." "You look tired." "I am tired." "Can you still cook, clean, handle the work?" Evelyn met his eyes. "I've been handling the work since I was 14. I'll keep handling it until I'm dead." He grunted, unimpressed. 8 kids is a lot of mouths. "I'm aware. Boys eat more as they get older. A lot more." "Yes." He looked at Caleb, then at Jonah, then at the other boys scattered through the group. "You'll bankrupt a man trying to feed all that." Something snapped in Caleb's expression. "We work. We all work. We're not just mouths." The man ignored him, still staring at Evelyn. "I'd consider it if you didn't bring the older boys. Maybe just the little ones. The girls." The words hit the crowd like a thunderclap. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Evelyn's face went pale, and Caleb lunged forward so fast that Jonah barely caught him. "You piece of— Caleb!" Evelyn grabbed his arm, her grip iron tight despite how thin she'd gotten. "Stop. He wants you to leave us behind." "I know what he wants." Caleb was shaking, rage pouring off him in waves. Evelyn held on, her fingers digging into his coat, and when she spoke again, her voice was low and deadly calm. "We're not splitting up. Ever. If that's the condition, then the answer is no." The man shrugged. "Suit yourself. But you're not going to find anyone willing to take on that much responsibility." He walked away. The fourth man didn't even ask questions. He just shook his head and left. By the time the fifth man approached, the crowd had started murmuring. Evelyn could hear fragments of conversation drifting through the cold air. Cursed, probably cursed. 2 dead husbands, 8 kids, who would be crazy enough. The fifth man was young, maybe 25, with a nervous smile in a small ranch he'd just started building. He looked at Evelyn like he wanted to help, but didn't know how. "Ma'am," he started. "I'd like to, but I just don't have the resources right now. Maybe in a few years, if things go well." "It's fine," Evelyn interrupted. "Thank you for your honesty." He nodded, relieved, and hurried away. The sixth man was drunk. Not falling down drunk, but enough that Evelyn could smell the whiskey before he even reached the platform. He grinned at her, swaying slightly, and looked her up and down like she was a horse he might buy if the price dropped low enough. "8 kids, huh?" He laughed, too loud. "What happened? You just couldn't figure out what was causing them?" Someone in the crowd snickered. Evelyn's face went blank, perfectly, dangerously blank. "Well," the drunk man pressed, "you gonna answer or get away from my mother?" Jonah's voice cracked on the last word, but he still stepped forward, fists clenched, his whole body vibrating with fury. The man blinked, surprised. "What'd you say, boy?" "I said get away from her. You're drunk and you're disgusting, and if you say one more word, I'm going to break your jaw." "Jonah—" Evelyn reached for him, but Jonah jerked away. "No, I'm done. I'm done with this whole thing. We don't need these people. We don't need any of them." The drunk man laughed again, but this time it had an edge to it. "You got a real mouth on you, kid. Someone should teach you some respect." "Try it." Jonah's voice dropped, cold and mean. "See what happens." For a second, Evelyn thought the man might actually take a swing at her son. Then the mayor stepped between them, hands raised, trying to defuse the situation before it exploded. "All right, that's enough. Sir, please step back. Jonah, calm down." "Don't tell me to calm down," Jonah snapped. "They're treating her like garbage, like she's nothing, like we're nothing." "We're not nothing." That was Lydia, her voice sharp and clear. "We're just poor." "Same thing," Jonah muttered. "It's not. It is here." The drunk man finally stumbled away, muttering something about ungrateful brats. The crowd's murmuring got louder. Evelyn could feel their judgment pressing down on her like a physical weight. Not just curiosity anymore, but something meaner. Entertainment. They were enjoying this. The mayor looked deeply uncomfortable. "Mrs. Mercer, perhaps we should take a break." "No." Evelyn's voice was quiet but absolute. "If there's anyone else, bring them forward." "Ma'am, I don't think—" "Bring them forward." The mayor hesitated, then looked out at the remaining men. Nobody moved. The silence stretched out, brutal and complete, until even the wind seemed to quiet down just to make the rejection more obvious. Then a little girl's voice cut through the cold. "Mama, I'm scared." Evelyn looked down. Nora was 5 years old, tiny for her age, with blonde hair that needed washing and eyes too big for her thin face. She hadn't spoken in 2 months, not since she'd watched her stepfather die. The doctor said it was shock, that she'd talk again eventually, but Evelyn had started to wonder if eventually would ever come. But now Nora was talking, and her voice was so small and frightened that something cracked in Evelyn's chest. "I know, baby." Evelyn knelt down, ignoring the snow soaking through her skirt. "I know you're scared. Are we going to be okay?" Evelyn didn't have an answer. She'd been lying to her children for months now, promising them things would get better, that they'd find a home, that everything would work out. She was so tired of lying, but when she looked at Nora's face, at all her children's faces, she couldn't bring herself to tell them the truth. So she lied again. "We're going to be okay." "How?" "I don't know yet, but we will." Nora didn't look convinced, but she nodded and pressed closer against Evelyn's side. Evelyn stood back up, her knees protesting, and faced the crowd again. The mayor was watching her with something that might have been pity. The remaining men were already turning away, conversation over, decision made. Nobody wanted her. Nobody wanted them. Evelyn had known this was a possibility, had known the odds were against her from the start, but knowing something and feeling it land on you like a gravestone were two very different things. "Mama," Caleb's voice was rough. "We can leave. We don't need this town. We'll figure something out." "Figure what out?" Jonah demanded. "We have no money, no food, nowhere to go. We'll find work." "Where? Doing what?" "I don't know, but anything's better than standing here while they laugh at us." "Boys," Evelyn's voice cut through their argument. "Stop." They stopped, but the tension didn't leave. Caleb looked like he wanted to hit something. Jonah looked like he wanted to burn the whole town down. The younger children just looked cold and miserable and so small it made Evelyn's heart hurt. She'd failed them. Again. The mayor cleared his throat. Mrs. Mercer, I'm very sorry, but it seems... The sound of hoofbeats cut him off. Everyone turned. At first, Evelyn couldn't see anything through the snow. Then a shape emerged from the storm. A massive horse moving fast, its rider hunched against the wind. The hoofbeats got louder, thunderous, like something out of a story. The horse burst into the town square and stopped so abruptly that snow sprayed up around its hooves. The rider dismounted in one smooth motion, and Evelyn felt the entire atmosphere shift. She didn't know who he was, but clearly everyone else did. The crowd went silent. Not the uncomfortable silence from before. This was different. This was fear and respect tangled up together. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, maybe 40 years old. He wore a heavy coat that looked expensive, and his face was all hard angles and weathered skin. His eyes swept across the town square, cold and assessing, before landing on the mayor. I'm late, he said. His voice was deep, rough from the cold. The mayor actually stammered. Mr. Vale, we didn't expect, that is, we didn't think you'd... Where are they? I'm sorry. The women, from the bride selection. The man's gaze moved across the square, past the remaining young women still waiting near the church, and stopped on Evelyn. She felt his attention like a physical thing. That one, he said, pointing at her. Who is she? The mayor blinked. That's Mrs. Mercer, but, sir, she's... Has anyone chosen her yet? No, but, Then she's available. The mayor's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. Mr. Vale, with all due respect, Mrs. Mercer comes with 8 children, and I can count. The man started walking toward the platform. Evelyn's mind was racing. She didn't know who this Mr. Vale was, but the way everyone was reacting to him, the fear, the deference, told her he was important. Powerful, maybe. Rich, definitely. And he was walking straight toward her. Caleb moved instinctively, putting himself between his mother and the approaching stranger. The man stopped, looked at Caleb, and something almost like approval flickered across his face. Good instinct, he said. What's your name? Caleb? Her son's voice was wary. Caleb Mercer. You always protect your mother like that? Yes. Even when it's stupid? Caleb's jaw tightened. It's not stupid. Sometimes it is. The man's gaze shifted to Evelyn. Your son? Yes. Evelyn found her voice, though it came out rougher than she intended. My oldest. How many others? 7. Ages? 5 to 15. The man nodded slowly like he was calculating something. Then he did something Evelyn didn't expect. He looked past her, really looked, at each of the children lined up behind her. Not the quick, dismissive glance the other men had given them. This was thorough, deliberate. Tell me who they are, he said. Evelyn frowned. What? Your children. Tell me who they are. I just told you. 8 children, ages... I don't care about their ages. The man's voice wasn't impatient exactly, but it was firm. I want to know who they are, names, what they're good at, what they care about. The request was so unexpected that Evelyn couldn't think of a response. Nobody had asked her that. Not once in this entire humiliating process had anyone asked about her children as actual people. She hesitated. Why? Because if I'm taking you, I'm taking all of them, and I need to know what I'm getting. Something hot and dangerous flared in Evelyn's chest. We're not livestock. I didn't say you were. You're talking like we are. The man's expression didn't change. You want honesty or polite lies? What? You've been standing here for 2 hours while men rejected you because they were scared of the responsibility. They dressed it up nice, made excuses, but that's what it was. Fear. He gestured at the crowd. These people are watching you like entertainment because it makes them feel better about their own problems. So I'll ask again, do you want honesty, or do you want me to waste both our time pretending this is something it's not? Evelyn stared at him. Her throat felt tight, and she couldn't tell if she wanted to scream at him or thank him for finally saying out loud what everyone had been thinking. Honesty, she said. Good. The man's gaze moved back to the children. Start with him. He pointed at Caleb. Evelyn took a breath. Caleb, 15. He's strong, good with horses, stubborn, doesn't trust easily. Why not? Because people keep letting him down. The man grunted. Fair enough. Next, Jonah, 13, smart. Too smart sometimes. Angry at the world. Why? Because the world's been cruel to him. Jonah's face flushed red, but he didn't look away. Next, the man said, Lydia, 12, practical, good with numbers, wants to be a teacher. Does she read? Every chance she gets. Good. The man's eyes moved to the next child. That one? Samuel, 10, quiet, good worker, doesn't complain. Ever? Not once in his life. The man studied Samuel for a long moment. What does he care about? Evelyn had to think about that. Samuel was the one who disappeared into his own head, who could work for hours without saying a word. Animals, she said finally. He cares about animals. Next. Ruth, 8, loud, messy, doesn't listen. The man almost smiled. Why not? Because she's 8 and she thinks she's invincible. Is she? No, but she hasn't figured that out yet. This time the man did smile, just barely, before moving on. Next. Ben, 7, curious about everything, asks too many questions. That's not a flaw. Try living with it. The man huffed something that might have been a laugh. Next. Nora, 5, Evelyn's voice caught. She doesn't talk much. Why not? She's scared. Of what? Everything. The man's expression softened, just slightly. He looked at Nora, really looked at her, and Evelyn saw something shift in his eyes. Recognition, maybe? Or understanding. Last one, he said. Clara, also 5. Nora's twin. She talks enough for both of them. As if on cue, Clara piped up. Are you going to marry Mama? The entire square went silent. The man looked down at Clara, completely unfazed by the question. Maybe. Do you have a big house? Yes. Can we have our own beds? Yes. And food? As much as you can eat. Clara considered this. Okay. You can marry her. Despite everything, despite the cold and the humiliation and the bone-deep exhaustion, Evelyn almost laughed. The man did laugh, a short bark of genuine amusement that seemed to surprise him as much as everyone else. Then he turned back to Evelyn, and his face went serious again. You've got good kids, he said. I know. Strong, hard workers from what I can tell. They are. But they're going to be expensive. Food, clothes, schooling, that's a lot of resources. I'm aware. And he paused, choosing his words carefully. You're not what most men are looking for. I know that too. Why not? The question caught her off guard. What? Why aren't you what men are looking for? Evelyn felt anger rise in her throat, sharp and bitter. Because I'm old, tired. I come with 8 children and 2 dead husbands and more problems than any sane person would want. Because I'm difficult and stubborn and I don't smile enough. Because I've got nothing to offer except more work and more responsibility. Is that honest enough for you? The man didn't flinch. You forgot something. What? You survived. Evelyn opened her mouth, closed it, couldn't find words. 2 husbands dead, 8 kids to feed, no money, no home, and you're still standing here, the man continued. Most people would have broken. You didn't. That's worth something. Not to 6 other men. Those men were idiots. The bluntness of it startled a laugh out of Evelyn, harsh and surprised and not at all ladylike. The man's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes warmed. I'm Ronan Vale, he said. I own Iron Ridge Ranch, about 20 miles north of here. Cattle operation, 8,000 acres, 60 employees. I lost my wife and daughter 10 years ago, and I haven't looked at another woman since. He paused. Until now. Evelyn's heart was pounding. Why now? Because I'm tired of living like I'm already dead. The honesty of it hit her like a punch. She saw it then. The same exhaustion she'd been carrying, reflected back at her. Different circumstances maybe, but the same bone-deep weariness of just surviving instead of living. I'm not going to lie to you, Ronan said. Marriage to me won't be easy. The ranch is isolated. The work is hard. I'm not good at talking about feelings, and I don't do well with people who need constant reassurance. He gestured at the children. But I can give them a home, safety, education, and I won't separate them, ever. Evelyn's throat was so tight, she could barely speak. Why would you take us on? Because I need someone strong enough to stand beside me, not behind me, beside me. Ronan's gaze held hers. I've been running that ranch alone for 10 years. I'm good at it. But I'm tired. And those kids... He glanced at Caleb, then Jonah, then the others. They've got fight in them. That's rare. Worth protecting. We're broken, Evelyn whispered. So am I. You'll regret this. Maybe, Ronan shrugged. But I'd regret walking away more. Evelyn looked at her children. Caleb was watching her carefully, waiting for her decision. Jonah looked suspicious but hopeful. The younger ones just looked cold and tired and ready for this to be over. Then she looked at Ronan Vale, this strange, blunt man who'd ridden through a blizzard to ask her questions nobody else had bothered with, and made a decision that terrified her. All right, she said. Yes. The word fell into the silence like a stone into water. Ronan nodded once, satisfied. Good. We'll leave in the morning. That fast? No point waiting. Storm's getting worse. He turned and walked back to his horse, leaving Evelyn standing there with her children and the entire town staring at them in shock. The mayor finally found his voice. Mr. Vale, are you certain? Yes. Ronan swung back into the saddle with easy grace. Mrs. Mercer, be ready at dawn. Bring whatever you can carry. I'll send wagons for the rest. Then he rode away, disappearing back into the storm as suddenly as he'd appeared. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Caleb spoke, his voice rough with disbelief. Did that just happen? I think so, Evelyn said faintly. Are we really leaving? Yes. With him? Yes. Jonah laughed, sharp and borderline hysterical. We're either saved or completely screwed. Language, Evelyn said automatically, but she was thinking the same thing. Clara tugged on her coat. Mama, is he nice? I don't know. But we're going with him anyway? Yes. Why? Evelyn looked down at her daughter, at all her children, and told them the only truth she had left. Because it's the only chance we've got. The wagons arrived before dawn, just like Ronan said they would. Evelyn hadn't slept. She'd spent the night in the boarding house room they'd been sharing, all 9 of them crammed into a space meant for 2, trying to figure out if she'd just made the best decision of her life or the worst mistake imaginable. Caleb sat by the window the entire night, watching the street like he expected Ronan to change his mind and never come back. Jonah paced until Lydia told him to sit down before he wore a hole in the floor. The younger children eventually fell asleep in a pile on the bed, exhausted from cold and stress and too many emotions they didn't know how to process. When the knock came, Evelyn jumped despite expecting it. She opened the doors to find a man in his 50s, weathered and solid, with kind eyes and snow in his beard. Mrs. Mercer? His voice was gruff but not unkind. Name's Frank Cooper. I'm the foreman at Iron Ridge. Mr. Vale sent me to help with the move. We don't have much to move, Evelyn said. Frank looked past her at the single room, taking in the few bags they'd managed to keep, the children still rubbing sleep from their eyes. His expression didn't change, but something softened around his mouth. That's all right, ma'am. We brought supplies for the trip. Food, blankets, warm clothes for the little ones. He paused. Mr. Vale said to make sure everyone's comfortable. He said that? Yes, ma'am. Evelyn didn't know what to do with that information, so she just nodded and started gathering their things. The trip to Iron Ridge Ranch took 6 hours through snow that kept trying to bury the road. Frank drove the lead wagon with Evelyn and the youngest children. 2 other ranch hands drove the second wagon with Caleb, Jonah, and the older kids. Frank didn't talk much at first, just kept the horses moving steady through the storm. But after an hour of silence broken only by the wind and the creak of the wagon wheels, he cleared his throat. Mr. Vale's a good man, he said. Fair, honest. Doesn't ask anything of his people he wouldn't do himself. Evelyn pulled the blanket tighter around Nora and Clara. You don't have to convince me. I already said yes. I know, just thought you should hear it anyway. Frank guided the horses around a drift. He's been alone a long time, since Anna died. Anna was his wife? Yes, ma'am. Sweetest woman you'd ever meet. She and the baby both went during childbirth, nearly destroyed him. Frank's voice went quiet. Some men drink when they lose someone. Some men rage. Mr. Vale just stopped. Stopped laughing. Stopped living, really. Just kept working. Been that way for 10 years. Why are you telling me this? Because you should know what you're walking into. Frank glanced at her. That ranch is beautiful, ma'am, but it's haunted. And I don't mean by ghosts. Ben leaned forward from the back of the wagon. Is it really haunted? No, Evelyn said firmly. Maybe a little, Frank said at the same time. Evelyn shot him a look. He shrugged, unrepentant. The boy asked, I don't lie to children. It's not haunted, Evelyn repeated. It's just sad. There's a difference. Frank considered that. I suppose you're right, ma'am. They rode in silence for another hour before the trees finally opened up and Evelyn got her first look at Iron Ridge Ranch. She'd expected something nice. Ronan was clearly wealthy, so she'd prepared herself for a decent house, maybe some outbuildings, a barn. She wasn't prepared for this. The main house was massive, 2 stories of solid timber and stone, with a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides and windows that glowed warm against the snow. Behind it stretched barns, corrals, bunkhouses, storage buildings, all laid out with military precision. Cattle dotted the white fields in the distance, dark shapes against the endless snow. Smoke rose from multiple chimneys. It looked like a small town, not a ranch. Sweet mercy, Lydia whispered from the other wagon. Caleb didn't say anything, but his eyes were huge. Even Jonah looked impressed, though he was clearly trying not to show it. The wagons pulled up to the main house, and before Frank could even set the brake, the front door opened. Ronan stepped out, followed by a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and a face that looked like it didn't tolerate nonsense. Mrs. Mercer. Ronan came down the porch steps. He wasn't wearing a coat despite the cold, just a wool shirt and vest. You made good time. Your man drives fast, Evelyn said. Frank knows the roads. Ronan looked at the children climbing out of the wagons, taking inventory like he was checking a delivery. Everyone here? Nobody left behind? We're all here. Good. He gestured to the woman behind him. This is Margaret Ross. She runs the household. Anything you need, ask her. Margaret stepped forward, her sharp eyes moving over the bedraggled group. You all look half frozen. Come inside before you catch your death. She didn't wait for a response, just turned and walked back into the house, clearly expecting them to follow. Evelyn hesitated, suddenly unsure. This was real now. No turning back. Mama? Clara's small voice broke through her paralysis. Can we go in? I'm cold. Yes. Evelyn took a breath. Yes, let's go in. The inside of the house was even more overwhelming than the outside. Hardwood floors polished to a shine. A massive stone fireplace crackling with real fire. Furniture that looked expensive and comfortable at the same time. Rugs that weren't threadbare. Windows with actual curtains instead of old sheets tacked up. The younger children stopped just inside the door, staring like they'd walked into a palace. Shoes off, Margaret said briskly. I just cleaned those floors. They scrambled to obey, even Jonah, who usually fought every instruction. Margaret watched them with an expression that might have been approval, then pointed down a hallway. Bedrooms are upstairs. I've prepared 4 rooms for the children, 2 for the boys, 2 for the girls. You'll need to sort out who sleeps where. She looked at Evelyn. Your room is at the end of the hall. Mr. Vale's is downstairs. Separate rooms. Something loosened in Evelyn's chest that she hadn't realized was tight. Thank you, she managed. Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen the work that needs doing. But Margaret's voice had lost some of its edge. Go on, get settled. Dinner's at 6. Don't be late. The children didn't need to be told twice. They stampeded up the stairs, their voices echoing through the house for the first time in months. Excited, amazed, almost happy. Evelyn started to follow, but Ronan's voice stopped her. Mrs. Mercer, a word. She turned. He was standing by the fireplace, his face unreadable. We need to establish some ground rules, he said. Evelyn's guard went up immediately. What kind of rules? The practical kind. Ronan gestured at a chair. Sit down. I'd rather stand. Suit yourself. He didn't sit either. First rule, I expect honesty. Always. I don't care if it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. If something's wrong, I need to know. Fine. Second, your children work. Not like servants. I'm not looking for unpaid labor, but they pull their weight. Everyone on this ranch contributes. They're used to working. Good. Third, discipline is your territory. I won't interfere unless safety's involved, but I also won't tolerate disrespect toward the staff or destruction of property. Evelyn bristled. My children aren't destructive. I didn't say they were. I'm establishing boundaries. It sounds like you're establishing control. I'm establishing clarity. Ronan's voice stayed level. You want to know what I expect, I'm telling you. He wasn't wrong, but Evelyn still felt defensive. Anything else? Yes. This marriage is legal and binding, but I'm not expecting... He paused, clearly uncomfortable. I'm not expecting intimacy. Not right away. Maybe not ever. That's your choice. Evelyn felt her face heat. Oh. I know that's blunt, but I'd rather have the conversation now than have you worry about it later. She didn't know what to say to that. Part of her was relieved. Another part was oddly insulted, though she couldn't explain why. The room Margaret showed you is yours, Ronan continued. Lock on the door. Privacy. I won't enter without permission. Thank you. Don't thank me for basic decency. He moved toward the window, looking out at the snow-covered fields. One more thing. There are parts of this house I'd prefer you avoid for now. What parts? Anna's music room, and the nursery upstairs at the end of the east hall. His voice went flat. They're locked. Please don't ask me to open them. Evelyn understood immediately. Those were the haunted rooms Frank had mentioned. Not literally haunted, just filled with grief so thick it had nowhere else to go. I won't, she said quietly. Ronan nodded, still staring out the window. Margaret will show you how everything works. The kitchen, the laundry, the staff schedules. She's been running this place since before Anna died, so trust her judgment. What exactly do you expect me to do here? Whatever needs doing. Ronan finally looked at her. I'm not hiring you as a housekeeper, if that's what you're worried about. You're my wife. You run the household however you see fit. Margaret will help, but the decisions are yours. That's a lot of responsibility. You've been handling responsibility your whole life. This is just a bigger scale. He wasn't wrong about that either. The wedding's in 3 days, Ronan added. Just a legal formality. The circuit judge comes through on Thursday. We'll do it here, quick and simple. No fuss. 3 days. Evelyn's stomach clenched. That's fast. Would waiting make it easier? No. Then there's no point dragging it out. Ronan moved toward the door, clearly done with the conversation. Get some rest. You look exhausted. He left before Evelyn could respond. She stood there alone in the beautiful, empty room, listening to her children's voices drifting down from upstairs, and wondered what the hell she'd gotten herself into. Dinner that night was chaos. Margaret had prepared enough food for a small army: roast beef, potatoes, fresh bread, vegetables that hadn't come from a can, and pie that made Ben literally gasp when he saw it. The children attacked the meal like they hadn't eaten in days, which wasn't far from the truth. Their food in Red Hollow had been sparse at best. Slow down, Evelyn said automatically. You'll make yourselves sick. But it's so good, Clara mumbled around a mouthful of bread. And it's not going anywhere, Evelyn countered. Chew. Ronan sat at the head of the table, eating methodically, watching the controlled chaos with an expression Evelyn couldn't read. Margaret moved in and out of the room, bringing more food, taking empty plates, orchestrating everything with quiet efficiency. Mr. Vale, Lydia said suddenly, her voice unnaturally polite. Thank you for this meal. It's very kind. You don't have to thank me every time you eat, Ronan said. It's your house now, too. Lydia blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Oh, that goes for all of you. Ronan's gaze moved around the table. This isn't charity. You're family now. Act like it. Samuel spoke up, his quiet voice barely audible. What does that mean? Means you don't need permission to exist here. You live here. This is your home. The children exchanged glances, clearly not sure if they believed him. Can we really go anywhere we want? Ruth asked. Within reason. Stay away from the equipment sheds unless Frank's with you. Don't spook the cattle. and stay out of the horse paddock until we know who can ride and who can't. I can ride, Caleb said immediately. We'll see. Caleb's face flushed. I've been riding since I was 6. Then you'll have no problem proving it tomorrow. Ronan's tone wasn't confrontational, just matter of fact. We test everyone's skills before we let them near the animals. Safety rule. I don't need to be tested. I know what I'm doing. Caleb? Evelyn warned. No, it's fine. Ronan looked at Caleb directly. You're angry because you think I'm questioning your abilities. Aren't you? No, I'm making sure you don't get hurt or killed because someone overestimated their experience. Ronan cut a piece of beef. 2 years ago, a ranch hand told me he could handle the stallion in the north pasture. I believed him. The horse threw him into a fence post and broke 3 of his ribs. He was lucky he didn't die. Caleb's jaw worked. I'm not stupid. I didn't say you were, but confidence isn't the same as competence. And I won't risk someone's life because they were too proud to be careful. Jonah laughed, short and bitter. He's got you there. Shut up, Jonah. Make me. Boys, Evelyn said sharply. They subsided, but the tension didn't leave. Caleb glared at his plate. Jonah smirked like he'd won something. Ronan just kept eating, unaffected. Mr. Vale, Ben said, his voice eager and bright, how many horses do you have? About 60. Ben's eyes went huge. 60? Give or take. Some are working horses. Some are breeding stock. A few are retired and just living out their days. Can I see them? Tomorrow. Can I touch them? If Frank says it's safe. Ben vibrated with excitement. I love horses. I used to watch them all the time back in Kansas. We couldn't afford one, but I'd sneak over to Mr. Henderson's farm and just watch them for hours. That's so. Ronan's expression softened almost imperceptibly. You know anything about caring for them? A little. Mr. Henderson let me help brush them sometimes. He showed me how to check their hooves and clean out the stalls. Good. We can always use another hand in the stables. Ben looked like he might explode from happiness. Evelyn felt something crack in her chest. Her son hadn't smiled like that in over a year. What about me? Ruth demanded. What can I do? What do you want to do? I don't know. Something fun. Work isn't usually fun. Then I don't want to work. Ruth, Evelyn said, mortified, but Ronan just raised an eyebrow. That's fine. You don't have to work. Ruth looked suspicious. Really? Really, but you also don't get to eat the food Margaret cooks, sleep in the warm bed upstairs, or wear the new clothes we'll be buying for you. Ruth's face screwed up in confusion. That's not fair. Sure it is. Everyone here contributes. If you don't contribute, you don't benefit. But I'm 8. So I started working when I was 6. Ruth looked at Evelyn, clearly expecting her to intervene. Evelyn just shrugged. He's right. You work. You eat. But no buts. That's how life works. Ruth slumped in her chair, defeated. Margaret, passing through with more bread, made a sound that might have been a laugh. After dinner, the children scattered to explore their new home. Evelyn helped Margaret clean up, despite the older woman's protests. You don't have to do this, Margaret said. That's what I'm here for. I need to do something with my hands or I'll go crazy, Evelyn said honestly. Margaret studied her for a moment, then nodded and handed her a towel. They worked in silence for a while, the rhythm of washing and drying oddly soothing. You're worried, Margaret said eventually. Of course I'm worried. About what specifically? Evelyn laughed, sharp and humorless. Everything. Whether this will work, whether I made a huge mistake, whether my children will adjust or completely fall apart, whether Ronan will regret taking us in, whether... Stop. Margaret's voice was firm but not unkind. You'll drive yourself mad thinking like that. How should I think? One day at a time, one problem at a time. Margaret set down the dish she'd been washing. You want my honest opinion? Yes. You'll be fine. Your children are resilient, and Mr. Vale, he's a good man. Hard sometimes, not always easy to read, but good. Everyone keeps saying that. Because it's true. Margaret picked up another dish. He's been dead inside for 10 years. You're the first thing that's made him act like a living person since Anna died. That's worth something. Evelyn didn't know what to say to that, so she just kept drying dishes. Later, after the children were in bed and the house was finally quiet, Evelyn stood at the window of her new room and looked out at the snow-covered ranch. It was beautiful, overwhelming, terrifying. A knock at the door made her jump. "It's me." Ronan's voice came through the wood. Evelyn opened the door. He stood in the hallway, still dressed, his face tired. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "No, I just wanted to make sure you had everything you needed." "We're fine." "Good." He started to turn away, then stopped. "Your son, Caleb, the angry one." "He's not angry. He's protective." "Same thing sometimes." Ronan leaned against the doorframe. "I wasn't trying to insult him at dinner." "I know." "Does he know?" Evelyn sighed. "Caleb's been the man of the family since he was 11. He's had to protect us, provide for us, make decisions no child should have to make. And now suddenly there's you, and he doesn't know where he fits anymore." "He fits here. They all do." "You say that, but he doesn't believe it yet. None of them do. They're waiting for the other shoe to drop." "What shoe?" "The one where you change your mind, where this all turns out to be too much, where they end up abandoned again." Evelyn crossed her arms. "They've been let down by every adult who was supposed to protect them. Why would you be different?" Ronan was quiet for a long moment. "I won't abandon them." "Prove it." "How?" "Stay. Keep your word. Show up every single day." Evelyn met his eyes. "That's all they need. Consistency. Someone who doesn't disappear when things get hard." "I can do that." "Can you?" "Yes." No hesitation, no doubt, just certainty. Evelyn wanted to believe him. She was just so tired of wanting things she couldn't have. "We'll see," she said. Ronan nodded and left without another word. Evelyn closed the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding for reasons she couldn't name. 3 days later, she married him. The ceremony was exactly what Ronan promised. Quick, simple, legal. The judge read the words. They both said yes. Margaret and Frank witnessed. The children watched from the doorway, quiet and uncertain. And just like that, Evelyn Mercer became Evelyn Vale. That night, Jonah came to her room after everyone else was asleep. "Mama?" He stood in the doorway, silhouetted by lamplight. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you happy?" The question caught her completely off guard. "What? Are you happy?" "With him." "With this?" Jonah gestured vaguely at the house. "Because if you're not, we can leave. We can figure something else out." Evelyn looked at her son, 13 years old and already carrying the weight of the world, and felt her heart break a little. "Come here," she said. He crossed the room and sat on the edge of her bed, his shoulders tight with tension. "I don't know if I'm happy," Evelyn said honestly. "I don't even know what happy feels like anymore. But I know we're safe, and we're together, and that's enough for now." "What if it's not enough later?" "Then we'll deal with it later." Jonah was quiet, picking at the blanket. "I don't trust him." "I know." "Do you?" "I don't know him well enough to trust him yet, but I trust that he means what he says, and I trust that he's giving us a chance." Evelyn put her hand over Jonah's. "That's all we can ask for right now." "What if he changes? What if he gets tired of us?" "Then we'll survive, just like we always have." Evelyn squeezed his hand. "But maybe, just maybe, he won't. Maybe this time we got lucky." Jonah didn't look convinced, but he nodded and stood up. "Good night, Mama." "Good night, sweetheart." He left, and Evelyn lay awake in the darkness, listening to the house settle around her. Somewhere below, she heard footsteps. Ronan, probably, unable to sleep. She wondered if he was regretting his decision. She wondered if she was regretting hers. But mostly, she wondered if it was possible for broken people to build something whole. The first real test came 3 weeks later, when Ronan took Evelyn into town. She hadn't wanted to go. The memory of standing on that platform, being rejected over and over while the town watched, was still too raw. But they needed supplies, and Ronan insisted she come with him. "You're not hiding on the ranch forever," he said. "You're my wife. They need to see that. I don't care what they see. Maybe not, but I do." So she went, sitting beside him in the wagon with her hands clenched in her lap and her stomach tied in knots. Red Hollow looked exactly the same. Same buildings, same muddy streets, same people staring as they drove through. Evelyn kept her eyes forward, refusing to look at anyone directly. Ronan pulled up in front of the general store and set the brake. "Stay close," he said quietly. "I'm not a child." "I know, but people talk and I'd rather you didn't have to hear it alone." He wasn't wrong. The moment they stepped inside, conversation stopped. Every person in the store turned to stare. Evelyn felt their judgment like insects crawling on her skin. The shopkeeper, a round man named Henderson, recovered first. "Mr. Vale, always a pleasure. What can I get for you today?" "The usual order, plus clothing for 8 children." Ronan pulled out a list Margaret had written. "Sizes are here." Henderson took the paper, his eyes flicking to Evelyn. "And for the lady? Whatever she needs. Put it on my account." Evelyn started to protest. She didn't need anything. But Ronan gave her a look that said, "Not here, not now." They moved through the store gathering items. Evelyn could hear whispers behind her, fragments of conversation that weren't trying very hard to be quiet. Can you believe he actually married her? With all those children, poor man. I heard they're eating him out of house and home already. She must have done something to convince him. You know how desperate women can be. Each word landed like a slap. Evelyn's face burned, but she kept moving, kept reaching for items on the shelves, kept pretending she couldn't hear. Then a woman's voice cut through the whispers, loud and crystalline and dripping with false sweetness. "Well, well, Mrs. Vale. How unexpected." Evelyn turned. Victoria Beaumont stood in the doorway, dressed in silk that probably cost more than Evelyn's entire wardrobe. She was beautiful in that polished, untouchable way that rich women always seem to be, and her smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "Mrs. Beaumont," Evelyn said carefully, "I heard about your marriage. Such a surprise to everyone." Victoria moved closer, her perfume overwhelming in the small space. "We all thought Mr. Vale would choose someone more suitable, and yet he chose me." "Yes. How strange." Victoria's gaze traveled over Evelyn's worn dress, her work-roughened hands. "I suppose some men prefer charity cases to actual companions." The store went completely silent. Evelyn felt something cold settle in her chest. She'd been poor her whole life, had endured countless small cruelties from people who thought poverty made you less human. Usually, she just took it, swallowed the anger, moved on. But something had changed in the past 3 weeks. Maybe it was having a full stomach for the first time in years. Maybe it was sleeping in a real bed. Maybe it was watching her children finally stop looking so afraid all the time. Or maybe it was just that she was tired of being everyone's punching bag. "Is that what you tell yourself?" Evelyn's voice came out steady, almost conversational. "That the only reason a man would choose me is charity?" Victoria's smile faltered slightly. "I'm simply stating facts." "No. You're being cruel because you can't understand why he'd want someone like me instead of someone like you." Evelyn took a step closer. "And that terrifies you, doesn't it? The idea that maybe wealth and beauty aren't enough." "How dare you?" "Yeah, I dare because I have nothing left to lose." Evelyn's voice didn't rise, but it hardened. "You can mock my clothes, my hands, my dead husbands, my children. But here's the truth you can't stand. He chose me. Not you. Not any of the perfect, suitable women in this town. Me." Victoria's face went white, then red. "You little—" "Mrs. Beaumont." Ronan's voice cut through the building confrontation like a knife. He'd appeared beside Evelyn without her noticing, his face calm, but his eyes absolutely glacial. "Mr. Vale." Victoria's voice turned honey-sweet again, though her hands were shaking. "I was just congratulating your wife on her good fortune." "That's not what it sounded like." "I'm sure you misunderstood." "I understand perfectly." Ronan's voice stayed level, almost polite, which somehow made it more terrifying. "You were insulting my wife. In public. In front of witnesses." Victoria laughed, too high and too nervous. "I was simply making conversation. You were being cruel and stupid, which is interesting because I always thought you were smarter than that." The color drained from Victoria's face. "Mr. Vale, I didn't mean— I own the water rights to the creek that runs through your family's property." Ronan's tone didn't change, still calm, still polite. "Did you know that?" Victoria went very still. Yes. Those rights come up for renewal next spring. I was planning to extend them at the current rate. Very reasonable, very fair. He paused. I'm reconsidering. The threat landed like a bomb. Victoria's father's cattle operation depended on that water. Without it, they'd be ruined before summer. You can't. Victoria's voice cracked. You wouldn't. I can, and I will, if I hear one more word about my wife that isn't respectful. Ronan's gaze swept the store, taking in every person who'd been whispering earlier. That goes for all of you. Mrs. Vale is under my protection. Insult her, mock her, or make her feel unwelcome in this town again, and I'll remember it. Henderson cleared his throat nervously. Now, Mr. Vale, there's no need for... There's every need. Ronan looked back at Victoria. Do we understand each other, Mrs. Beaumont? Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. Finally, she managed a strangled, yes. Good. Ronan turned to Evelyn. Are you finished here? Evelyn's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear her own voice. Yes. Then let's go. They walked out of the store together, leaving absolute silence behind them. Evelyn didn't speak until they were in the wagon and moving. Then she finally managed, You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. I can fight my own battles. I know. I saw. Ronan glanced at her. You held your own, but that doesn't mean you should have to. She's going to hate me now. She already hated you. Now she's just scared to show it. Evelyn laughed, surprised and slightly horrified. You threatened her family's water supply. I stated facts about a business arrangement that's contingent on mutual respect. That's the same thing. Technically, no. Ronan's mouth twitched, almost smiling. But practically, yes. They rode in silence for a while. Evelyn tried to process what had just happened. For the first time in her life, someone had stood beside her. Not in front of her, not behind her, but beside her. Letting her fight, but making sure she wasn't fighting alone. It felt strange, uncomfortable, and something else she couldn't name. Thank you, she said quietly. Ronan just nodded and kept driving. That night, Jonah was waiting when they got home. What happened? He demanded before they'd even finished unloading. Frank said there was trouble in town. Frank talks too much, Ronan muttered. So there was trouble. It's handled, Evelyn said. What kind of trouble? The usual kind. People being small and cruel because they can be. Jonah's face went dark. Who? It doesn't matter. Yes, it does. Who was it? Jonah? Was it that Beaumont woman? Frank said she's always causing problems. It's handled, Ronan said, his voice firm. Leave it alone. Why? So she can do it again? She won't. How do you know? Because I made sure she understood the consequences. Jonah stared at Ronan, clearly trying to figure out if he was lying. Then something shifted in his expression, not quite trust, but maybe the beginning of it. Good, Jonah said finally. He walked away, but Evelyn saw his shoulders relax slightly. Like knowing someone was protecting his mother made the world feel a little less dangerous. The following week settled into something almost normal. The children found their rhythm on the ranch. Caleb proved himself with the horses and started working alongside Frank. Ben practically lived in the stables. Samuel discovered a talent for handling the cattle dogs. And even Ruth found her place helping Margaret in the kitchen. Lydia spent every spare moment in Ronan's library, devouring books like she was making up for lost time. And Nora, who still barely spoke, started following Ronan around the ranch like a small, silent shadow. At first, Ronan didn't seem to know what to do with her. He'd be checking fences or inspecting equipment, and suddenly there'd be Nora standing a few feet away, just watching. Does she need something? He asked Evelyn one evening. No, she just likes being near you. Why? Evelyn shrugged. You're safe, quiet. You don't push her to talk. I don't know what to say to her. You don't have to say anything. Just let her be there. So he did. And slowly, over days and weeks, Nora started getting closer. Not touching, not speaking, just existing in the same space. Then one morning, Ronan was working in his office when small fingers appeared on the edge of his desk. He looked up to find Nora standing there, holding a drawing she'd made. It was crude, the way 5-year-old drawings always are, but clearly showed the ranch house and stick figures that were probably meant to be the family. Ronan took it carefully, like it was made of glass. Did you draw this? Nora nodded. It's good. Better than anything I could do. The tiniest smile appeared on Nora's face before she turned and ran away. Ronan stared at the drawing for a long time. Then he pinned it to the wall beside his desk, where it stayed. But not everything was getting easier. One afternoon in early March, a massive blizzard rolled in with almost no warning. Within an hour, the wind was howling and visibility dropped to almost nothing. Frank burst into the house, covered in snow. "Boss, we've got a problem. The cattle in the north pasture are trapped by a drift. If we don't move them, they'll freeze." Ronan was already reaching for his coat. "How many men do we have?" "4. We need at least 6 to move that many heads safely." "I'll go." That was Caleb standing in the doorway. "No," Evelyn said immediately. "I can help." "I said no." "Mama, they need people. You're 15 years old. You're not going into a blizzard. I'm not a child. You're my child, and I'm not risking you in that storm." Caleb's face went red. "You can't stop me." "Yes, I can. I'm trying to help. By getting yourself killed?" "I know what I'm doing." "Enough." Ronan's voice cut through the argument. "Caleb, you're staying here." "But that's final. You're good with horses, but you don't know this land. You'd get lost in 5 minutes, and then we'd be rescuing you instead of the cattle." Caleb looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Ronan's expression stopped him. He turned and stormed out of the room, slamming a door somewhere in the house. Ronan pulled on his heavy coat and gloves. Evelyn grabbed his arm. "How bad is this?" "Bad. But we've handled worse." "Don't lie to me." He met her eyes. "It's dangerous, but I'm not leaving those cattle to die." "What about leaving your wife to bury another husband?" The words came out sharper than she intended. Ronan went very still. "I'll be back," he said quietly. "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." "Ronan, I'll be back, Evelyn. I promise." He left before she could respond, taking Frank and the other men with him. The door closed, and Evelyn was left standing in the warm house with the sound of the blizzard tearing at the walls. Hours passed. The storm got worse. Night fell, and there was still no sign of them. Margaret tried to keep everyone calm, getting the children fed and into bed, but Evelyn could see the worry in her eyes. Frank's wife, Mary, came over from the foreman's cottage to wait with them, her hands twisted together, her face pale. "They're fine," Mary said, not sounding like she believed it. "Frank knows that land better than anyone. They'll be fine." Evelyn nodded and didn't say that knowing the land didn't matter when you couldn't see 3 feet in front of your face. At midnight, Ben developed a fever. It started with him being fussy at dinner, which wasn't unusual. He was 7 and tired from playing in the snow all day. But by bedtime, he was flushed and hot, and by midnight, he was burning up. Evelyn pressed a hand to his forehead and felt panic spike through her chest. "Margaret, get cold water. Now." Margaret moved fast, returning with cloths and a basin. They worked together to cool Ben down, but his temperature kept climbing. His breathing got harsh and labored. He started mumbling nonsense in his sleep. "We need a doctor," Evelyn said. "Closest one is in Red Hollow, 8 miles away." Margaret's voice was grim. "In this storm, that might as well be 100. "Then we get him ourselves." "Evelyn, you can't—" "I'm not watching another child die." Evelyn's voice cracked. "I can't. I won't." Margaret's face softened. "I know, but you can't get to town in this. You'll die trying." "Then what do I do?" Evelyn looked down at her son, his small body shaking with fever. "What do I do?" The other children had gathered in the doorway, woken by the commotion. Nora pushed through them and climbed onto the bed beside her brother. "Ben," she whispered, her voice thin and scared. "Ben, wake up." "Nora, honey, don't—" Evelyn started. "Wake up," Nora said louder, shaking his shoulder. "You have to wake up, please." She was crying now, tears streaming down her face, and Evelyn realized with a shock that Nora was speaking more than she had in months. The fear had broken through whatever wall she'd built around herself. "Please," Nora sobbed. "Please don't die, please." "He's not going to die," Evelyn said, trying to sound certain. "He's going to be fine." But she didn't know that. She didn't know anything except that her son was burning up and she was helpless to stop it. That's when the front door crashed open. Ronan stumbled in, half frozen, covered in snow and ice. Behind him came Frank and the other men, all of them looking like they'd barely survived. But Ronan had someone else with him. Dr. Samuel Gray, the physician from Red Hollow, red-faced and furious and very much alive. "What the hell were you thinking?" the doctor was yelling. "You could have killed us both. That storm is deadly." "My son is sick." Ronan's voice was hoarse from the cold. "Where is he?" Evelyn appeared at the top of the stairs, her face white. "Here. He's here." Ronan took the stairs 2 at a time, the doctor following behind, still muttering about insanity and death wishes. Dr. Gray took one look at Ben and his expression went professional. "How long has he been like this?" 2 hours. Maybe 3. Temperature? High. Very high. The doctor started examining Ben, asking questions, checking symptoms. Evelyn answered mechanically, her eyes on Ronan. He was soaked through, shivering despite his heavy coat, his face gray with cold and exhaustion. "You rode through that storm," she said. "Yes." 8 miles. "Yes." "You could have died." "I know." "Why would you—" "Because you asked me not to let you bury another husband." Ronan met her eyes. "And I wasn't going to let you bury a son." Something broke in Evelyn's chest. She started crying, not delicate tears but harsh, choking sobs that shook her whole body. Ronan pulled her against him, and she didn't care that he was soaking wet and freezing. She just held on to him like he was the only solid thing in the world. "It's pneumonia," Dr. Gray said from the bed. "Early stages. If we treat it aggressively, he should be fine." "Should be?" Evelyn's voice was muffled against Ronan's chest. "Will be," the doctor corrected firmly. "He's young, strong, otherwise healthy. The fever will break in a day or 2. Relief made Evelyn's knees weak. Ronan's arms tightened around her. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For going. For bringing him back. For—" Her voice broke again. "For caring." Ronan didn't answer, just held her while the doctor worked, and the storm raged outside and their family gathered around them. Later, after Ben's fever finally broke and he fell into real sleep instead of the sick, restless tossing, Evelyn found Ronan in his office. He'd changed into dry clothes but still looked exhausted. "You should sleep," she said from the doorway. "Can't. Too much adrenaline." She came in and sat in the chair across from his desk. "What you did tonight was insane." "Yes. You could have died. The doctor could have died." "I know." "So why did you do it?" Ronan was quiet for a long moment. "I told you before. I couldn't stand the thought of you losing another child." "But why? We're not your responsibility. Not really." "Yes, you are." "Because we're married?" "Because I chose you." Ronan looked at her directly. "I chose all of you. That means something." "What does it mean?" "It means I don't walk away when things get hard. It means I show up. It means—" He stopped, struggling for words. "It means I care what happens to you, to them. I didn't expect to, but I do." Evelyn felt tears rising again. "I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything with it. Just let it be true." She nodded, not trusting her voice. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the storm outside finally starting to quiet. "Jonah thinks you're going to leave," Evelyn said eventually. "I won't." "How do you know?" "Because I've been alone for 10 years. I forgot what it felt like to have people to come home to. People who need me. People who—" He trailed off. "Who what?" "Who make the house feel less empty." Evelyn's heart clenched. "We're very loud." "I know. It's good." "You say that now. Wait until Ruth breaks something expensive." Ronan almost smiled. "I can handle Ruth." "Can you handle all of us?" "I don't know, but I am willing to find out." Evelyn stood up, suddenly exhausted. "Good night, Ronan." "Good night." She started to leave, then turned back. "What you did tonight. That was the first time in my life anyone's ever ridden into a storm for me." Then everyone else was an idiot. The simple certainty in his voice made something warm bloom in her chest. She left before he could see her smile. Upstairs, she checked on Ben one more time. He was sleeping peacefully now, his fever broken, his breathing easy. Nora was curled up beside him, one small hand holding his. Evelyn stood in the doorway watching them, thinking about the man downstairs who'd risked his life for a child he'd known less than a month. And she realized, with absolute terror, that she was starting to fall in love with him. Spring came slowly to Iron Ridge, melting snow, revealing muddy fields, and the first green shoots pushing through frozen ground. The ranch woke up from winter like something stretching after a long sleep, and with it, the Mercer children, Vale children now, though none of them used that name yet, began to bloom in ways Evelyn hadn't thought possible. Caleb was out before dawn every morning, working alongside Frank and the ranch hands. He'd proven himself enough that even the most skeptical cowboys treated him like one of their own. He came home exhausted every night, his hands blistered and his shoulders aching, but there was something different in his face. Purpose, maybe. Or pride. Lydia had convinced Ronan to let her tutor the younger children in the mornings, and she attacked the job with fierce determination. She'd set up a makeshift schoolroom in the library, complete with slates and readers Ronan had ordered from Denver. The younger kids complained, but they learned. Even Jonah, who'd spent months angry at everything, had started to settle. He'd discovered he had a head for numbers, and Ronan had started teaching him the ranch accounts. At first, Jonah was suspicious, like this was some kind of test, but after a few weeks, he was actually asking questions, engaged despite himself. But the real transformation was in Nora. The night she'd begged her brother to wake up had cracked something open inside her. She still didn't talk much, but when she did, her voice was stronger, and she'd attached herself to Ronan with a devotion that was almost unsettling. She followed him everywhere, to the barns, to the corrals, to his office, never asking for anything, just existing in his orbit like a small moon. Ronan handled it with more grace than Evelyn expected. He didn't push her away or tell her to go play. He just let her be there, occasionally explaining what he was doing in his quiet, matter-of-fact way. One morning in late April, Evelyn found them in the south pasture. Ronan was checking fences, and Nora was sitting on the top rail nearby, watching him work. "Hand me that hammer," Ronan said, not looking up. Nora climbed down, picked up the hammer, which was almost too heavy for her, and brought it over. Ronan took it without comment and kept working. They stayed like that for an hour, Ronan repairing the fence and Nora helping in small ways, neither of them talking much, just comfortable in the silence. Evelyn watched from a distance, something tight and complicated twisting in her chest. That night, after the children were in bed, she found Ronan in the barn checking on a mare about to foal. "You're good with her," Evelyn said from the doorway. Ronan looked up, surprised. "Who?" "Nora. You're patient with her." "She's easy to be patient with. She's quiet." "She wasn't always." Evelyn came closer, watching him run his hands over the mare's swollen belly. After her stepfather died, she stopped talking completely. The doctors said it was trauma, that she might never speak again. "But she did, because of you and Ben." Evelyn paused. She was so scared that night, scared she was going to lose another person, and you brought the doctor back. You saved him. Anyone would have done the same. "No, they wouldn't have." Evelyn's voice went quiet. "Most people would have waited until morning, told themselves it was too dangerous, too risky. You didn't." Ronan didn't answer, just kept examining the mare. "Why did you really do it?" Evelyn asked. "I told you." "I know what you told me, but there's more to it than that." Ronan was silent for so long that Evelyn thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he spoke, his voice rough. "I had a daughter. She lived for 3 hours." Evelyn went still. "Anna died giving birth. The baby, she was so small. The doctor said her lungs weren't developed enough, that there was nothing anyone could do." Ronan's fawn stilled on the mare. "I held her while she died, watched her struggle to breathe, knowing I couldn't help her, couldn't save her." "Ronan, when you said Ben was sick, all I could think was, not again, not another child dying while I stand there helpless." He finally looked at her. "So I went. Because maybe I couldn't save my daughter, but I could save your son." Evelyn felt tears burning behind her eyes. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was 10 years ago." "That doesn't make it hurt less." "No, but it makes it easier to live with." Ronan turned back to the mare. "Most days." Evelyn wanted to say something comforting, something meaningful, but every word that came to mind felt hollow. So instead, she just moved closer and stood beside him, their shoulders almost touching, both of them watching the mare breathe in the dim light of the barn. After a while, Ronan spoke again. You asked me once why I chose you. I remember. I chose you because when I looked at your children, I saw survivors. People who'd been through hell and came out fighting. He paused. And when I looked at you, I saw someone who refused to break, who kept those kids together through everything. That kind of strength. It's rare. I'm not strong. I'm just stubborn. Same thing sometimes, Evelyn almost smiled. Margaret said something similar. Margaret's smart. They fell quiet again. The mare shifted, restless, and Ronan murmured something soothing. His hands were gentle on the animal, patient and careful. Evelyn thought about those same hands pulling her son back from the edge of death, thought about them teaching Jonah how to balance ledgers, showing Caleb how to break horses properly, letting Nora hand him tools without complaint, thought about how those hands had belonged to a man who'd lost everything and somehow still had room to care about a broken family that wasn't his. I'm falling in love with you, she said before she could stop herself. Ronan's hands froze. He didn't look at her. I didn't mean to, Evelyn continued, her heart pounding. I didn't want to. I told myself this was just practical. A business arrangement. But then you rode into that storm, and you stood up for me in town, and you let my children matter to you, and Stop. The word was quiet but absolute. Evelyn's throat closed. I can't give you that, Ronan said, still not looking at her. I can give you safety, partnership, respect. But love, I don't have that anymore. Anna took it with her when she died. The rejection hit like a physical blow. Evelyn took a step back. I understand, she managed. Evelyn, no, it's fine. I shouldn't have said anything. It was stupid. It wasn't stupid, but it's not fair to you. You deserve someone who can... I don't want someone else. The words came out sharper than she intended. I want you, but apparently that's not an option. She turned and left before he could respond, walking fast across the dark yard back to the house. Her face was burning with humiliation and hurt and anger at herself for being foolish enough to hope. Inside, she went straight to her room and locked the door. The next morning was awkward and tense. Ronan left early before breakfast and didn't come back until late. Evelyn threw herself into work, helping Margaret with the laundry, reorganizing the pantry, anything to keep her hands and mind busy. The children noticed something was wrong but didn't know what. Caleb asked if she was feeling all right. Lydia gave her worried looks. Even Jonah seemed uncertain, like the foundation had shifted under his feet. 3 days passed like that. Ronan avoiding her, Evelyn avoiding him, both of them moving through the house like ghosts who couldn't quite see each other. Then disaster struck in a way none of them expected. Caleb was working with a young stallion in the training corral, showing off for the other ranch hands. The horse was green, barely broke, and everyone knew it was too soon to push him hard. But Caleb was 15 and stupid and wanted to prove himself. Frank saw what was happening and started shouting for him to stop. Caleb ignored him. The stallion reared, panicked, and came down wrong. Caleb tried to stay in the saddle, but the horse bolted sideways and slammed him directly into the fence rail. The crack of wood, or bone, nobody was sure which, echoed across the ranch. Evelyn heard the commotion from the house and ran. By the time she reached the corral, Frank and 2 other men were pulling Caleb away from the fence. Her son's face was gray with pain, blood streaming from a gash above his eye, his left arm hanging at a wrong angle. Don't move him, someone shouted. We need to get him inside. His arm's broken. Everyone shut up. That was Jonah, pushing through the crowd, his face white. Caleb, can you hear me? Caleb's eyes fluttered open. Yeah. Does anything else hurt besides your arm? Ribs. Can't breathe right. Okay, we're going to get you inside. Just don't move. They carried Caleb to the house as carefully as possible. Margaret had already cleared the kitchen table, and they laid him there while someone rode for the doctor. Evelyn stood frozen, her hands shaking, memories crashing over her. Another accident, another injured person she loved, another moment of helplessness. Mama. Caleb's voice was weak but steady. I'm okay. You're not okay. I'm alive. That's what matters. Evelyn wanted to yell at him for being reckless, for taking stupid risks, for scaring her half to death, but she couldn't get the words out past the fear choking her throat. Then Ronan was there, appearing in the doorway like a storm. What happened? His voice was sharp. The stallion threw him, Frank said. Slammed him into the fence. Arms definitely broken. Maybe ribs, too. Ronan moved to the table, his eyes cataloging injuries with frightening efficiency. Caleb, look at me. Caleb met his gaze. I'm going to check your ribs. This is going to hurt. Understand? Yes. Ronan's hands were careful but thorough, pressing along Caleb's side. Caleb hissed in pain but didn't cry out. 2, maybe 3 cracked ribs, Ronan said. You're lucky. Could have been a lot worse. I know. Do you? Ronan's voice hardened. Because from where I'm standing, you just did something monumentally stupid. I had it under control. You had nothing under control. That horse wasn't ready, you weren't ready, and you could have been killed. But I wasn't. That's not the point. The anger in Ronan's voice made everyone in the room go still. Even Caleb looked shocked. You want to prove yourself? Fine. Work hard, learn the job, earn respect the right way. Ronan's jaw was tight. But don't you ever risk your life to impress people who don't matter. Do you understand me? Caleb's face flushed red. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. Yes, you were. And it was stupid and reckless and… Ronan stopped, his voice cracking slightly. And I can't watch another person die because they were too proud to be careful. The admission hung in the air like smoke. Caleb stared at Ronan, something shifting in his expression. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix broken bones. I know, but I am. Ronan nodded once, then turned and left the room without another word. Evelyn found him an hour later, after the doctor had come and gone, and Caleb was resting upstairs with his arm properly set and his ribs wrapped. Ronan was in the barn again, this time repairing tack that didn't need repairing. He's going to be fine, Evelyn said. Ronan's hands didn't stop moving. I know. The doctor said he'll heal completely. No permanent damage. Good. Ronan, look at me. He finally stopped, setting down the leather he'd been working. When he looked at her, his face was exhausted. You were terrified, Evelyn said quietly. Of course I was. He's a kid who just… No, you were terrified because you care about him, about all of them. She moved closer. You said you couldn't give me love, that you don't have it anymore, but that's not true, is it? Ronan's jaw tightened. Evelyn, you yelled at Caleb because you were scared of losing him. You rode through a blizzard for Ben. You let Nora follow you around even though it would be easier to send her away. You teach Jonah your business. You order books for Lydia. Her voice shook. You love them. Maybe you don't want to. Maybe it scares you, but you do. That's different. How? They're children. They need… And I don't? The question came out raw. I don't need someone to care about me? To see me as more than just a business arrangement? Ronan looked away. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. You're just too scared to admit it. Of course I'm scared. The words burst out of him. I loved Anna with everything I had, and when she died, it nearly destroyed me. 10 years, Evelyn. 10 years of just existing, not living, and now you're here with your children and your strength and your… He stopped, struggling. And I'm terrified that if I let myself love you, I'll lose you too, and I can't survive that again. Evelyn felt tears spill over. You don't get to choose whether you love someone or not. It just happens. Then I'll fight it. Why? Because it's safer. Safer for who? Ronan didn't answer. Evelyn crossed the distance between them and put her hand on his chest, feeling his heart racing under her palm. I've buried 2 husbands, she said quietly. I know what loss feels like, but I'd rather have whatever time we have together than spend the rest of my life protecting myself from pain, because that's not living, that's just surviving. And if I lose you, then you'll grieve, and eventually you'll heal, just like you did before. She paused. But at least you'll have had something real. Ronan's hand came up to cover hers. His fingers were rough, calloused, trembling slightly. I don't know how to do this, he said. Do what? Let someone in again. Then we'll figure it out together. Evelyn moved closer. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm just asking you to try. They stood like that for a long moment, the barn quiet around them except for the soft sounds of horses shifting in their stalls. Then Ronan pulled her against him, his arms coming around her like he was afraid she'd disappear. Evelyn held on to him just as tight, feeling the tension in his body slowly start to ease. I think I'm falling in love with you too, he whispered into her hair, and it terrifies me. Good. We can be terrified together. He huffed something that might have been a laugh. You're stubborn. You've mentioned that before. It's still true. They stayed there until the sun started setting, neither of them ready to let go. Over the next few weeks, something shifted between them. Not dramatic, not sudden, just a gradual softening. Ronan started eating breakfast with the family instead of leaving before dawn. Evelyn stopped locking her bedroom door at night. They talked more, shared more, existed in the same space without the careful distance they'd maintained before. The children noticed. Jonah watched them like he was waiting for something to go wrong. Lydia looked quietly pleased. The younger ones just seemed happy that the weird tension had finally disappeared. Caleb healed slowly, frustrated by his limitations, but learning to accept help. Ronan spent extra time with him, teaching him things that didn't require two working arms: ranch management, accounting, how to read weather patterns, and predict storms. One evening, Caleb found Ronan in his office and stood in the doorway, clearly nervous. "Can I ask you something?" Caleb said. Ronan looked up. "What? Are you going to adopt us? Legally, I mean." The question caught Ronan off guard. "Do you want me to?" "I don't know. Maybe." Caleb shifted his weight, uncomfortable. "It's just, we're living here, working here, but we're still Mercers. Still separate somehow." "You're not separate, you're family." "But not really. Not on paper." Ronan set down his pen. "If I adopted you, what would that mean to you?" Caleb thought about it. "That we really belong here. That you're not just tolerating us. I'm not tolerating you. I chose you, all of you. But you chose Mama. We just came with her." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" Ronan stood up and walked around the desk. "When I rode into Red Hollow that day, I was looking for someone strong enough to stand beside me. Someone who wouldn't break under pressure. I found your mother. But I also found you, 8 kids who'd survived things most adults couldn't handle, who protected each other, who fought for each other." He paused. "I didn't choose your mother in spite of you. I chose her partly because of you." Caleb's eyes went bright. "Really?" "Really." Ronan hesitated, then added, "And for what it's worth, I think of you as my son. Not stepson. Not your mother's child. My son." Something cracked in Caleb's expression. He looked away, blinking hard. "Thank you," he managed. "You don't have to thank me for the truth." Caleb nodded and left quickly, before his emotions could overflow. Ronan stood there, feeling like he'd just navigated something important without completely screwing it up. That night, after the children were finally asleep, Evelyn came to Ronan's room for the first time. She knocked softly, and when he opened the door, they just looked at each other for a long moment. "Hi," she said. "Hi. Can I come in?" "Yes." She stepped inside and he closed the door behind her. The room was simpler than she expected. Solid furniture, no decoration, everything functional. "I was thinking," Evelyn said, suddenly nervous, "maybe we should stop pretending this is just a business arrangement." "What is it then?" "A marriage. A real one." Ronan moved closer. "Are you sure?" "I'm terrified, but yes, me too." He touched her face gently. Both the terrified part and the yes part. Evelyn smiled and Ronan kissed her, careful at first, then deeper when she pressed closer. It felt like falling and flying at the same time, like the first warm day after a brutal winter. They ended up tangled together in his bed, whispering in the darkness about everything and nothing. Their fears, their hopes, the children, the ranch, the future they were building together one uncertain day at a time. "I think Jonah's finally starting to trust you," Evelyn said at one point. "What makes you say that?" "He asked me yesterday if you were going to leave." Ronan tensed. "What did you tell him?" "I said no, that you're not going anywhere." She paused. "Was I right?" "Yes." No hesitation. "I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" "I promise." Evelyn believed him. Maybe that was foolish. Maybe she'd been burned too many times to trust so easily. But she believed him anyway. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt safe. The real breaking point came in July. during a drought that threatened to destroy half the territory's cattle operations. The creek that fed Iron Ridge started running low, then lower, until it was barely a trickle. Other ranches were already losing livestock. Desperate men started making desperate decisions, and tensions in Red Hollow escalated to the point where fights broke out in the street over water access. Ronan spent 18-hour days managing the crisis, rationing water, moving cattle to higher pastures, negotiating with neighboring ranches to share resources. He came home exhausted every night, barely eating before collapsing into bed. Evelyn watched him slowly burning out and felt helpless to stop it. "You need to rest," she told him one evening when he came in looking half dead. "I will, after we solve this. There might not be a solution. You can't control the weather." "No, but I can control how we respond to it." Ronan sat down heavily, his face gray with exhaustion. "If I don't figure this out, we'll lose everything, the cattle, the ranch, people's livelihoods. And if you work yourself to death trying, then at least I'll have tried." The stubbornness in his voice reminded Evelyn of herself, that same desperate determination to fix things through sheer force of will. It scared her, seeing it reflected back. "You're not alone in this," she said quietly. "Let people help you." "I am. Frank's managing the crews, Margaret's organizing supplies. I meant your family, your children." She paused. "Jonah's been studying those land surveys for weeks. Have you asked him what he thinks?" "He's 13. He's also smarter than most adults I know, and he wants to help. They all do." Ronan looked like he wanted to argue, but he was too tired. "I'll talk to him." But before he could, Jonah appeared in the doorway the next morning with a stack of papers and a determined expression that made him look older than his years. "I found something," Jonah said without preamble. Ronan looked up from his coffee, his eyes bloodshot. "What?" "A solution. Maybe." Jonah spread the papers across the kitchen table, not caring that he was interrupting breakfast. "I've been going through your old surveys and property records. There's an underground spring on the northwest section of the ranch. Your grandfather capped it 40 years ago because the flow was inconsistent." "I know about that spring. It's useless." "Not anymore." Jonah pulled out a geological survey, his finger tracing lines that meant nothing to Evelyn but clearly meant something to him. "The water tables shifted. I checked the records from the land office. There was an earthquake in '62 that changed underground water patterns across the whole region. If we dig down another 20 feet and redirect the flow, we could access enough water to sustain the whole ranch through the drought." Ronan set down his coffee and actually looked at the papers. Really looked. His expression shifted from skepticism to interest to something like hope. "How did you figure this out?" Ronan asked. Jonah shrugged, trying to look casual despite the nervous energy radiating off him. "Math. And I read a lot of your old journals, the ones in the library about the land surveys and water management." "You've been reading my journals?" "You said I could use the library." Defensive now, like he expected to be told he'd overstepped. "And you left them on the shelf, so I figured they weren't secret or anything." "They're not secret." Ronan studied the calculations Jonah had laid out, pages of numbers and diagrams that must have taken days to complete. "These calculations, they're accurate?" "I checked them 3 times, and I had Lydia verify the math." "And you really think this could work?" "I think it's worth trying. The worst that happens is we waste some time digging. The best that happens is we save the ranch." Jonah met Ronan's eyes, and Evelyn saw something vulnerable in her son's face. "I know I'm just a kid. I know I might be wrong. But I wanted to help." Ronan was quiet for so long that Jonah started to fidget. Then he stood up and did something that surprised everyone. He pulled Jonah into a brief, firm hug. "You're not just a kid," Ronan said. "And if you're right, you just saved this ranch. You know that?" Jonah's face flushed red. "I just did the math." "You did more than that. You saw a problem everyone else missed and found a solution nobody else thought to look for." Ronan released him but kept his hands on Jonah's shoulders. "That's not just math. That's intelligence, initiative, leadership, exactly what this ranch needs." For a moment, Jonah looked like he didn't know what to do with the praise. His mouth opened and closed. His eyes went bright. Then he nodded quickly and turned away before anyone could see how much the words affected him. "So we can do it?" Jonah asked, his voice rough. We can dig? We can try. Ronan looked at Evelyn, who nodded her support. Get Frank. Tell him to assemble a crew. We start today. Jonah was out the door before anyone could blink. Evelyn moved to Ronan's side, looking down at the papers her son had compiled. You just made him the happiest he's been in years. He earned it. This is good work. Really good work. He's been so scared of disappointing you. Why would he think that? Because he's been disappointed by every man who was supposed to care about him. Why would you be different? Evelyn touched the papers gently. But you are different, and maybe now he's starting to believe it. Ronan nodded slowly, understanding. I'll make sure he knows that I'm proud of him. You just did. They broke ground on the spring project that afternoon. It was brutal work. The ground was hard, baked solid by weeks of heat and drought. Every shovelful felt like chipping at concrete. The sun beat down mercilessly, and even the toughest ranch hands were flagging by midday. But everyone pitched in. Frank coordinated the digging crews. The ranch hands took shifts with pickaxes and shovels. Even the children helped when they could, hauling tools, bringing water to the workers, doing whatever small tasks freed up the adults for the heavy labor. Caleb, his arm finally healed completely, worked like he was trying to prove something. He was out there at dawn and stayed until Frank physically ordered him to stop. His hands blistered and bled, but he wrapped them and kept going. You don't have to kill yourself, Frank told him during a water break. I'm fine. You're working yourself into the ground. So is everyone else. Everyone else didn't just spend 3 months healing from broken bones. Frank's voice was firm, but not unkind. Pace yourself, boy. This is going to take days, maybe weeks. You're no good to us if you collapse. Caleb wanted to argue. Evelyn could see it in his face, but he also respected Frank too much to dismiss the advice. He nodded and actually took a break, though he looked restless doing it. Samuel and Ben managed the horses, making sure the animals pulling equipment stayed hydrated and healthy. It was quiet, unglamorous work, but essential. Ben took to it naturally, his gentle hands and patient demeanor perfect for keeping frightened horses calm. Lydia kept detailed records of their progress, tracking depth, soil composition, water seepage, anything that might be useful. She'd set up a makeshift desk under a tarp and worked there all day, her face serious and focused. Ruth and Clara ran between the dig site and the house, bringing food and messages, their energy seemingly inexhaustible despite the heat. And Nora stayed close to Ronan, watching everything with her quiet, serious eyes. She handed him tools when he needed them, brought him water without being asked, existed in his space like a small, devoted shadow. Ronan seemed to have stopped questioning her presence. He just accepted it, occasionally explaining what he was doing in his quiet, matter-of-fact way. We're looking for changes in the soil, he told her at one point. Different colors, different moisture levels. That tells us we're getting close to the water table. Nora nodded solemnly, like she was absorbing information for a future exam. Evelyn watched them from a distance and felt that familiar twist in her chest. Gratitude and fear tangled together. Gratitude that her daughter had found someone who made her feel safe enough to emerge from her shell. Fear that they were all depending too much on this working, on the water being there, on Jonah's calculations being right. 3 days in, they hit rock. Frank stood in the pit they'd dug, already 15 feet deep, staring at the solid stone blocking their path. His face went gray. We'll have to blast, he said, climbing out to talk to Ronan. But if we use too much dynamite, we could collapse the whole thing or crack the aquifer. Not enough. And we'll just waste time and resources getting nowhere. How much do we use? Ronan asked. I don't know. I'm a ranch foreman, not a mining engineer. Frank wiped sweat from his face. And I don't want to be responsible for destroying what might be our only water source. They stood there in silence, the weight of the decision pressing down on everyone. The ranch hands had stopped working, waiting to see what would happen next. Defeat was starting to creep in, that familiar sense that maybe this was just another thing that wouldn't work out. Then Jonah spoke up from where he'd been helping Lydia with the records. I know someone who might help. Everyone turned to look at him. There's a mining operation 15 miles east, Jonah continued, his voice gaining confidence as he spoke. They've been drilling for silver since last year. I saw their supply wagons come through town last month when we went for supplies. They'd have engineers who know about blasting through rock without destroying what's underneath. Why would they help us? Frank said skeptically. They're a competing operation. Why would they share expertise? Because we have something they need. Jonah looked at Ronan. Water. If we get this spring flowing, we could sell them water access. Their operation's been struggling with shortages too. I heard some of their workers talking about it in the general store. They're hauling water from 12 miles away right now. That's expensive and time-consuming. Ronan stared at his stepson with something like amazement. When did you become a businessman? I've been paying attention. Jonah's face flushed, but he held Ronan's gaze. You're always talking about how business is about trading value. We have potential value. Water they need. They have actual value. Expertise we need. It's just negotiation. Just negotiation, Ronan repeated, and there was pride in his voice. That's good thinking, Jonah. Really good thinking. So can we try it? Yes. Ronan turned to Frank. Send someone to the mining camp. Tell them we want to discuss a partnership. Make it clear we're not begging. We're offering a business arrangement. Frank nodded and dispatched one of the ranch hands immediately. 2 days later, a mining engineer named Thomas Webb arrived at Iron Ridge. He was a gruff man in his 50s with powder burns scarring his hands, and a calculating look in his eyes that said he didn't do anything without getting paid for it. Show me what you've got, Webb said, not bothering with pleasantries. They took him to the dig site. He examined the rock face, the depth, the surrounding soil composition. He asked questions, lots of them, about water flow patterns, geological surveys, historical spring activity, and Jonah answered every single one with a confidence that surprised everyone, including himself. He'd clearly prepared for this, done his research, anticipated what an engineer would need to know. Webb listened carefully, occasionally grunting or nodding. When Jonah finished explaining, Webb spent another 10 minutes examining the site in silence. Finally, he straightened up and brushed rock dust off his hands. I can do it, Webb said, but it'll cost you. How much? Ronan asked. 3 charges of dynamite for my personal supply, my time and expertise for the blasting, and first rights to purchase water when you get this spring flowing, 50% discount off standard rates for the first year. That's steep. That's fair. You need me more than I need you. Webb's eyes were sharp. And if this works, you'll have more water than you know what to do with. Selling some to me at half price is still profit you wouldn't have otherwise. Ronan glanced at Evelyn, who'd come down to listen to the negotiation. She nodded slightly. The terms were aggressive, but not unreasonable. 1 year at 50% discount, Ronan countered. After that, we renegotiate based on market rates. Done. Webb stuck out his hand. Smart man. Let's get to work. The blasting was scheduled for dawn 2 days later, enough time for Webb to properly survey the site and set his charges with precision. Nobody slept well the night before. The entire household was tense with anticipation and fear. This was it. Either Jonah's calculations were right and they'd find water, or they'd just destroyed their only hope and wasted days of work and significant resources. Evelyn found Jonah sitting on the porch long after everyone else had gone to bed, staring out at the dark ranch. Can't sleep? She asked, sitting beside him. What if I'm wrong? His voice was small. What if we blast through that rock and there's nothing there? Everyone's counting on this. The whole ranch. If I'm wrong, then we tried, and we'll figure out something else. But everyone will know I failed, that I got their hopes up for nothing. Or everyone will know you tried to help, that you saw a problem and worked your ass off to find a solution, that you cared enough to risk being wrong. Evelyn put her arm around him. That's not failure, Jonah. That's courage. It doesn't feel like courage. It feels like I'm about to let everyone down. You've spent your whole life waiting for things to go wrong, expecting failure, preparing for disaster. She pulled him closer. But maybe, just maybe, this time things will go right. Things never go right for us. They've been going right for months now. You just don't trust it yet. Jonah's jaw worked, and she could see him fighting tears. What if I don't deserve it? What if I'm not smart enough, or good enough, or… Stop. Evelyn made him look at her. You are enough. Exactly as you are. Smart, yes, but also kind, and hardworking, and brave in ways you don't even recognize. She paused. And whether this works or not, that doesn't change. You don't have to be perfect to belong here. You just have to be you. I'm scared, Mama. I know, me too. But we're going to be scared together, and that makes it bearable. He nodded and leaned against her, and they sat there in the darkness until exhaustion finally pulled him toward sleep. The blasting happened at dawn. Everyone gathered at a safe distance, the entire household, the ranch hands, even some neighbors who'd heard about the attempt and come to watch. The air was tense, expectant, like the moment before a storm breaks. Webb worked methodically, setting the charges with the precision of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. Jonah stood beside him, asking questions, learning, absorbing everything like he might need to do this himself someday. "You've got a good mind, boy," Webb said at one point. "Ever think about mining engineering?" "I don't know what I want to do yet." "Well, you've got options. Smart kid like you." Webb finished setting the last charge. "All right, everyone back, way back. This is going to be loud." They retreated to the designated safe zone. Webb checked his fuses one more time, then lit them with practiced ease. "Fire in the hole!" Webb shouted and ran. The explosion, when it came, was massive. The ground shook. A tower of dust and debris shot into the air, and for a moment nobody could see anything, couldn't hear anything except the ringing in their ears and the settling of disturbed earth. Then the dust started to clear. Where solid rock had been, there was now a gaping hole leading deeper into the earth, and at the bottom, water was beginning to pool. Not a trickle, not a seep. A steady, strong flow that was already starting to fill the excavated space. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Frank let out a whoop that could probably be heard in Red Hollow. The cheer that went up from everyone gathered was deafening. Ranch hands were hugging each other. Neighbors were shouting congratulations. The children were screaming with excitement and relief. Webb was laughing, slapping Frank on the back. "Told you I could do it." But Evelyn only had eyes for Jonah. Her son stood frozen, staring at the water like he couldn't quite believe it was real. His face was blank with shock, his hands trembling at his sides. "You did it," Evelyn said, moving to his side. "We did it," Jonah corrected automatically, his voice shaking. "No, this was your idea, your research, your calculations, your solution." She pulled him into a hug, and this time he didn't just accept it. He clung to her like he was drowning. "I'm so proud of you. I was so scared I was wrong." "I know, but you weren't. What if I had been? Then we would have loved you anyway and tried something else." She pulled back to look at him. "That's what you don't understand yet. Your worth isn't conditional on success. We love you whether you save the ranch or not." Jonah started crying, huge gasping sobs he'd been holding in for probably years. All the fear, all the anger, all the grief and shame and desperate need to prove himself worthy finally breaking loose. Evelyn held him while he fell apart, and she didn't let go until he was ready. Ronan found them like that a few minutes later. He didn't say anything, just put his hand on Jonah's shoulder and squeezed. The gesture said everything that needed saying. When Jonah finally pulled away, wiping his face roughly, Ronan spoke. "That was impressive work. Professional-level thinking and execution. I read your journals and..." "So stop." Ronan's voice was firm but kind. "Take the compliment. You earned it." Jonah nodded, still not quite able to meet Ronan's eyes. "I mean it," Ronan continued. "What you did here, seeing the problem, doing the research, finding the solution, even arranging for Webb to help, that's the kind of thinking that builds empires. You should be proud of yourself." "I am," Jonah whispered. "I think I am." "Good." Ronan paused, then added, "Your father would be proud too. Both of them. They'd be proud of the man you're becoming." That broke something else in Jonah, something deeper and older. He nodded quickly and walked away before his emotions could overwhelm him again, but his shoulders were straighter than they'd been in years. By the end of the week, the spring was flowing strong and steady. Iron Ridge had water, the cattle were safe, the ranch was secure. And Jonah had transformed from the angry, suspicious boy who'd arrived in winter into someone who believed he could make things better. The success with the spring changed something fundamental in the family dynamic. The children had always worked hard, but now they worked with purpose, with confidence. Like they finally understood they weren't just guests in someone else's house, they were part of building something that belonged to all of them. But the real test of their family came from an unexpected direction. In August, a letter arrived from Denver. Lydia had been accepted into the Denver Female Seminary, a prestigious boarding school for girls who wanted to become teachers. She'd applied months ago in secret, using money she'd saved from doing odd jobs around the ranch and in town. The acceptance letter praised her entrance exam scores. Apparently, she'd scored in the top 5%, and offered her a partial scholarship that would cover about half the costs. Lydia brought the letter to Evelyn with shaking hands, her face a mixture of excitement and dread. "I know we can't afford it," she said quickly, the words tumbling out before Evelyn could even finish reading. "I know it's too much money, and you need me here with the younger kids, and it's probably stupid to even think about when there's so much work to do on the ranch, and—" "Stop," Evelyn interrupted, still reading the letter carefully. "Do you want to go?" "More than anything." "Then you're going." Lydia's eyes went huge. "But, Mama, the money, we'll figure it out." "It's $300 a year, plus another 100 or more for books and supplies and travel. That's more money than we've ever—" "I said we'll figure it out." Evelyn set down the letter and looked at her daughter, 12 years old and already so fierce, so determined, so ready to take on the world. "You earned this, Lydia. You worked for it, studied for it. You took that exam without telling anyone because you were scared we'd say no. And I'm not going to let you give up your dream because we're scared of the cost. What if we can't actually pay for it? Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But I'm not making decisions based on fear anymore." Evelyn touched Lydia's face gently. "You deserve this chance. And I'll be damned if I'm the one who takes it away from you." Lydia started crying. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me. You did this yourself." Evelyn pulled her into a hug. "I'm just proud enough to let you try." That night, Evelyn showed the letter to Ronan in his office. Her stomach was tight with anxiety. They'd never really discussed money for things like this, big, expensive things that weren't immediate necessities. Ronan read the letter twice, his face unreadable. Then he set it down carefully on his desk. $300, he said. "I know. Plus another 100 for books, travel, supplies, maybe more. I know. And I know that's a lot of money, and maybe we can't actually afford it, but I couldn't tell her no. I couldn't." Evelyn was talking too fast, anxiety making her ramble. "She worked so hard for this, and she's so smart, Ronan. She could really do something with her life if she gets this education. I know it's expensive, and maybe it's not practical, but—" "Evelyn," Ronan's voice cut through her spiral. "Stop." She stopped, bracing herself for the argument. "I'm not asking you to tell her no," Ronan said, looking confused. "I'm asking why you're worried about the money. We can afford it." Evelyn stared at him. "What?" "The ranch is profitable. We have savings. $400 won't break us." "But that's a fortune." "It's an investment in Lydia's future. That's not a fortune. That's just good sense." "But—" Evelyn struggled to find words. "We've never talked about money for things like this. I didn't know if you'd want to spend that much on what? On educating a child who wants to learn? Who has the brains and the drive to actually do something with that education?" Ronan shook his head. "Did you really think I'd say no? I didn't know. I thought maybe you'd think it was too much, or that it wasn't worth it, or that—" "What? That I'd stop caring once the novelty wore off?" Ronan's voice was sad, but not angry. "That I'd resent the cost of having a family?" Evelyn couldn't meet his eyes. Because yes, that was exactly what she'd been afraid of. "You're still waiting for me to leave," Ronan said quietly. "All of you are. Even after everything." "I'm not—" "Yes, you are." He stood up and moved to his desk, pulling out a ledger. "Come here. I want to show you something." Evelyn moved closer, confused. Ronan opened the ledger to a specific page. "This is the ranch operating account. This is our personal household account. And this," he pointed to a third column of numbers, "is the education fund I started the week after you arrived." Evelyn looked at the numbers and felt her throat close up. There was money there. Significant money. Money that had been building for months. "You started a fund?" Her voice came out barely above a whisper. 8 children. They're all going to need education. Some might want to go to university. Some might want trade school or apprenticeships. Whatever they choose, they're going to need resources. Ronan's finger traced the column. "So yes, I started a fund. I put aside a portion of the ranch profits every month specifically for this." Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to feel like you owed me something, or like you had to ask permission to use it. He looked at her directly. This family's resources are for this family. That includes education. But you did this without even knowing if it would work. If we'd work. I did it because I made a commitment to you and to them. And I don't make commitments I'm not willing to keep. He closed the ledger. Did you really think I'd bring 8 children here and then refuse to invest in their futures? I didn't know what to think. We've never had anyone. Evelyn's voice broke. Nobody's ever put money aside for us before. For their education, for their futures. We've always just been surviving, scraping by, hoping we'd make it through another month. Well, now you're not just surviving, you're building something, and that requires investment. Evelyn was crying now, unable to stop the tears. Ronan pulled her into his arms and let her fall apart against his chest. You're still waiting for the other shoe to drop, he murmured into her hair. Waiting for me to change my mind, to decide you're all too much trouble. I'm trying not to, she managed. I know. But it's going to take time, and that's okay. He pulled back to look at her. In the meantime, just trust this. I'm not going anywhere, and neither are any of you. We're family. That means something. What does it mean? It means I invest in your success. All of you. Because when you succeed, we all succeed. He wiped tears from her face. So yes, Lydia goes to school. And if Jonah wants to go to university, he goes. And if Caleb wants to buy land of his own someday, we help him. And if any of the others need resources to chase their dreams, we provide them. That's a lot of money over the years. That's what money's for, building the future you want. He smiled slightly. Besides, the ranch is doing well. We can afford it. Evelyn laughed through her tears. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. I love you. I love them. I want you all to thrive. So I make that possible however I can. He paused. That's not complicated. It's just love. She kissed him then, pouring all her gratitude and relief and lingering fear into it. He kissed her back, steady and sure, like he always was. When they finally told Lydia officially that she could go, that they'd handle the finances, she cried again. Then she hugged everyone in the house, even Ruth, who complained about being squeezed too tight. I'm going to make you proud, Lydia promised. You already do, Evelyn said. Now go show them what you're capable of. But the decision stirred something in the other children too. That evening, Caleb found Ronan in the barn. Can I talk to you? Caleb asked, hovering in the doorway like he wasn't sure he was welcome. Always. Ronan set down the bridle he'd been mending. What's on your mind? Caleb shifted his weight, uncomfortable. Lydia's going to school. Yes. Because she's smart and wants to learn. That's part of it. And you're paying for it, because you want her to have opportunities. Yes. Ronan waited, sensing there was more. What about the rest of us? Caleb's voice was tight. What if we want things too? What if we have dreams? Then we make them happen. Just like that? Just like that? Ronan studied Caleb's face. What do you want? I don't know yet, but I want to know that it's okay to want things, that we're not just, he struggled for words, that we're not just here to work and be grateful and not ask for anything. You're here because you're family, Ronan said firmly. Family gets to want things, gets to dream, gets to ask for help achieving those dreams. Even if it costs money? Even if it costs money. Within reason, yes. Caleb nodded slowly, absorbing this. So if I wanted to, I don't know, buy my own land someday? Start my own operation? Then we'd talk about how to make that happen. Might take time, might require planning, but yes, if that's what you want, we figure it out. And you wouldn't be angry that I wanted to leave? Angry? No. Proud, maybe. Sad to see you go, definitely. But angry? Never. Ronan moved closer. The goal isn't to keep you here forever. The goal is to prepare you to thrive wherever you choose to be. Something eased in Caleb's expression. I'm not ready to leave yet. I was just wondering. Wonder all you want. And when you're ready to talk seriously about the future, let me know. Caleb nodded and left, but his shoulders were less tense than when he'd arrived. Similar conversations happened with the other children over the following weeks. Samuel admitted he wanted to study animal behavior formally, maybe work with a veterinarian. Ben wanted to breed horses professionally. Ruth announced she was going to be a doctor, not a nurse, a doctor, and nobody doubted she'd do it through sheer force of will. So, each conversation felt like a small revelation. The children weren't just surviving anymore. They were planning futures, having dreams, believing those dreams might actually be possible. But it was Jonah's conversation that hit the hardest. He waited until late one evening, after everyone else had gone to bed, to knock on Ronan's office door. "Can I ask you something?" Jonah said from the doorway. "Of course." "Why do you want to adopt us? Really?" The question hung in the air, loaded with more meaning than the word suggested. Ronan set down his pen carefully. "Because you're my children. I want it to be official." "But we're not your children, not really. We're Mama's children from other men." Jonah's voice was steady but tight. "We're not your blood." "And?" Ronan's voice was patient. "Does that matter?" "I don't know, doesn't it?" "Not to me." Ronan leaned back in his chair. "Blood doesn't make a family, Jonah. Choice does. Showing up does. Loving someone even when it's hard does. I chose you. All of you. That makes you mine." Jonah was quiet for a long moment. "What if I don't want to be chosen?" "Then say so. I'm not forcing this on anyone." "That's not—" Jonah struggled visibly for words. "What if I'm not worth choosing? What if you figure out I'm too angry, too broken, too much work to be worth it?" "Stop." Ronan's voice was firm. "You're not broken. You're hurt. There's a difference." "How?" "Broken things can't be fixed. Hurt things heal, given time and safety, and people who give a damn." Ronan stood up and moved around the desk. "You've been hurt, badly, by people who should have protected you, by circumstances nobody should have to endure. But that doesn't make you broken. It makes you someone who survived." "I don't feel like a survivor. I feel like—" Jonah's voice cracked. "I feel like I'm constantly waiting for everything to fall apart again. Like this can't possibly be real. Like any day now you're going to realize we're too much trouble and send us away." "I'm not sending anyone away." "But you might. People always do, eventually." "I'm not people." Ronan moved closer, his voice intense. "I'm the man who chose you, when I had every reason not to. I'm the man who sees your brilliance, your strength, your potential. I'm the man who's proud as hell of what you accomplished with that spring." He paused. "And I'm the man who's asking you, begging you, to trust that I mean it when I say I'm staying." Jonah's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of trusting you. Of letting myself believe this is permanent. Of loving you like a father because—" His voice broke completely. "Because if I do, and then you leave, it'll destroy me, and I can't survive that again." Ronan pulled Jonah into a hug, firm and steady and unbreakable. For a second, Jonah resisted, his body rigid with years of learned self-protection. Then he collapsed against Ronan, shaking with the force of emotions he'd been holding back for so long. "I'm not leaving," Ronan said fiercely into Jonah's hair. "I'm not your father who died when you were young. I'm not your stepfather who couldn't handle the responsibility. I'm here. I'm staying. And no matter how scared you are, or how angry you get, or how many times you test me to see if I'll break, I'm still going to be here." "Promise?" The word came out small and broken. "I promise. On everything I have. On everything I am. I promise." Jonah sobbed, and Ronan held him through it, not offering empty comfort, but just being present. Being solid. Being the father Jonah desperately needed him to be. When Jonah finally pulled away, his face was red and his eyes were swollen. But something fundamental had shifted in his expression. Something that looked like the beginning of peace. "Okay," Jonah whispered. "Okay?" "Okay, I'll try. To trust you. To believe this is real." He wiped his face roughly with his sleeve. "I'm still going to mess up. Still going to be difficult sometimes." "I know. So will I." "But you'll stay anyway?" "I'll stay anyway." Ronan put his hands on Jonah's shoulders. "And someday, maybe not today, maybe not for a long time, you're going to believe it, really believe it, and you'll stop waiting for disaster." Jonah nodded, still not quite able to meet Ronan's eyes fully, but his shoulders were straighter than they'd been since arriving at Iron Ridge. "Can I ask you one more thing?" Jonah said. "Anything." If you adopt us, can I still be a Mercer too, or do I have to give that up? The question clearly surprised Ronan. Why would you want to stay a Mercer? Because it's who I am, where I came from. Jonah's voice strengthened. My father was a Mercer, my grandfather. It's my history, and I don't want to erase that, even if I'm also becoming a Vale. Ronan was quiet for a moment, thinking. Jonah Mercer Vale. How's that sound? Like I get to be both things at once. That's because you are both things at once. Your history matters. Where you came from matters. And where you're going matters too. Ronan smiled slightly. You don't have to choose between them. Jonah smiled back, a real smile, not the bitter half-smirk he usually wore. Thank you. He left, and Ronan stood there feeling like he'd just navigated the most important conversation of his life without completely screwing it up. Lydia left for Denver in late September. The entire family made the trip to see her off. All of them piled into 2 wagons for the journey to Red Hollow, where she'd catch the train. Lydia stood on the platform in her new traveling dress, a deep blue that Evelyn and Margaret had sewn together specifically for this occasion, looking both younger and older than her 12 years. Her trunk sat beside her, packed with clothes and books and supplies, everything labeled carefully with her name. Write to us, Evelyn said, hugging her so tight Lydia squeaked. Every week. I want to know everything. I will. I promise. And if you need anything, money, supplies, anything at all, you tell us immediately. I will. And if anyone's cruel to you or makes you feel small, you remember who you are. You're brilliant and capable and… Mama. Lydia pulled back, smiling through tears. I know. You've told me 100 times. I'll tell you 100 more if I have to. Lydia hugged each of her siblings in turn. Caleb told her to show those city kids what real intelligence looked like. Jonah made her promise to write about what she was learning. Samuel gave her a small carved horse he'd made. The younger children clung to her, not quite understanding why she was leaving, but knowing they'd miss her. Then she turned to Ronan. Thank you, she said simply, for making this possible, for believing in me. You earned it, Ronan said, his voice gruff with emotion. Now go show them what you're capable of. Make us proud. I'll try. You'll succeed, I have no doubt. Lydia smiled, then boarded the train with one last wave. They stood on the platform until the train disappeared from sight, and Evelyn felt that bittersweet ache of watching a child step into their future. Pride and loss tangled together in a way that was almost painful. She'll be amazing, Ronan said quietly, taking Evelyn's hand. I know, but I'm going to miss her every single day. That's what happens when you raise them right. They leave. He squeezed her hand. But they come back too. Because they want to, not because they have to. Because we built something worth coming back to. Evelyn leaned against him, and they stood there together while the other children slowly drifted back to the wagons and life kept moving forward whether they were ready or not. 3 years passed. Not smoothly, not perfectly. There were arguments and mistakes and moments of doubt. There were financial struggles and weather disasters and all the normal chaos of running a ranch and raising a family. But there was also growth. Caleb became Frank's official assistant foreman at 19, managing crews and making decisions with a confidence that would have seemed impossible in that angry 15-year-old who'd arrived half-frozen and ready to fight the world. He got engaged to Emma Reeves, the blacksmith's daughter, a strong, practical woman who matched him in stubbornness and exceeded him in patience. Jonah took over the ranch's financial operations completely at 16, proving himself not just competent, but brilliant. He'd started corresponding with a mathematics professor at the university in Denver, who was actively recruiting him for when he turned 18. Ronan had already promised to pay for his education. Lydia came home every summer, full of stories about her classes and her friends, and the teachers who were shaping her into the educator she wanted to become. She'd been offered a teaching position at a school in Cheyenne after graduation, and she'd accepted with the kind of quiet confidence that said she knew exactly what she was capable of. Samuel discovered he had an almost supernatural gift for training horses and working with dogs. Other ranches started hiring him specifically, paying good money for his expertise. At 14, he was already building a reputation as the best animal handler in the territory. Ruth grew into a whirlwind of energy and opinions, who somehow charmed everyone despite being loud and argumentative and completely unfiltered. She announced at age 11 that she was going to be a veterinarian, and nobody doubted she'd do it through sheer force of will. Ben became the head stable manager at 14, overseeing 60 horses with the same devotion he'd shown as a sick little boy, counting them from his bed. He had a gentle way with the animals that made even the most fractious horses calm under his hands. And the twins, Nora and Clara, grew into different versions of the same fierce spirit. Clara was loud and social, talking about traveling and seeing the world. Nora was still quiet, but her silence now felt like choice rather than fear. She'd started painting beautiful, haunting landscapes that Ronan hung throughout the house like they were fine art. The ranch itself flourished. The spring Jonah had found sustained them through 2 more droughts, and the water-sharing arrangement with the mining operation brought in steady additional income. They'd expanded their cattle operations, hired more permanent workers, and Iron Ridge became known as one of the most successful ranches in the territory. But more than the financial success, more than the growth and expansion, Iron Ridge had become something more fundamental. It had become a home, not a perfect home, not without conflict or struggle or the occasional disaster that threatened to upend everything, but a real home, where people fought and made up and learned to trust each other, where mistakes were forgiven and growth was celebrated and nobody had to earn their place through perfect behavior, where love existed not in spite of the mess, but because of it. One evening in late autumn, 4 years after that day in Red Hollow, Evelyn stood on the porch watching the sun set over the valley. The air was cool, but not cold yet, carrying the smell of approaching winter and wood smoke from the chimneys. Ronan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "That day in Red Hollow, standing on that platform." "Bad memory?" "No, just different now." She leaned back against him, comfortable in a way that still sometimes surprised her. "I was so sure I was nothing, that we were nothing, just burdens nobody wanted. And now? Now I know better." She turned in his arms to face him. "The world didn't reject me because I was weak. It rejected me because it couldn't see what you saw." What did I see? Someone who refused to break. Someone who kept fighting even when it seemed hopeless. Someone who built a family out of nothing but will and love and pure stubbornness. Her voice went soft. "Someone strong enough to build an empire beside you." Ronan smiled. "That sounds about right." "I used to think strength meant not needing anyone, handling everything alone, never showing weakness." Evelyn touched his face gently. "But that's not strength. That's just fear dressed up as independence." "What's real strength then?" "Letting people in, trusting them, building something together instead of trying to carry everything alone. Believing they'll stay even when things get hard." She paused. "You taught me that. You taught me how to live again, how to be something more than just a man going through the motions." Ronan pulled her closer. "We taught each other." They stood there as the light faded, wrapped in each other, while inside the house their children, their family, filled the space with noise and laughter and all the messy beauty of people who belonged to each other. Later that night, after everyone was asleep, Evelyn walked through the quiet house one more time. She stopped at each child's door, listening to their breathing, making sure they were safe. An old habit from harder times that she couldn't quite break. She stopped at the room that had been locked for so long. Anna's music room. It wasn't locked anymore. Nora played the piano now, her small fingers picking out melodies that filled the house with sound instead of silence. The room was no longer a shrine to grief. It was just a room where music lived and memories existed without crushing the present. Evelyn understood what that meant, that the past didn't have to be erased to make room for the future. It just had to be integrated, honored but not worshipped, remembered but not recreated. The dead could rest while the living kept building. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to find Ronan watching her from the hallway. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Just checking on everyone. They're fine, safe, home." "I know." She moved to him. "I'm just grateful for all of this, for you, for the life we built." "So am I." He kissed her softly. "Every single day." They went to bed together, and Evelyn fell asleep feeling safe in a way that once seemed impossible. Safe not because nothing bad could happen, but because she finally believed they'd survive whatever came next. Together. Because she'd learned the most important lesson of her life. The world had rejected her because it saw her burdens: 8 children, 2 dead husbands, poverty and desperation, and all the rough edges that came from surviving when survival should have been impossible. But Ronan had chosen her because he saw her strength, her refusal to break, her determination to protect her family no matter what it cost. And that choice, that single moment of being seen and valued and chosen, had changed everything. Not because it fixed all their problems or made life suddenly easy, but because it gave them a foundation to build on, a place to stand while they rebuilt themselves into something stronger than they'd been alone. Years later, when people in Red Hollow talked about the Vales, they'd speak with a mixture of respect and curiosity. How did a rejected widow with 8 children become the mistress of the most successful ranch in the territory? How did those ragged, half-starved kids transform into capable adults who were making their own marks on the world? Some said it was luck. Some said it was Ronan Vale's charity. Some said it was just good timing and favorable circumstances. But the people who actually knew the family understood the truth. It wasn't luck or charity or circumstance. It was choice. The choice to see value where others saw burden. The choice to build together instead of struggling alone. The choice to love each other through the fear and the doubt and the constant threat of disaster. The choice to believe that broken people could build something whole. And that choice, repeated every single day in 1,000 small ways, had transformed everything. Evelyn stood on that same porch 10 years after arriving at Iron Ridge, watching her grandchildren play in the yard while her children built their own lives, and her husband worked beside her building something that would last beyond all of them. And she finally understood what strength actually meant, not surviving alone, but thriving together, not being chosen by everyone, but being truly seen by the one person who mattered, not proving she was unbreakable, but admitting she was human, flawed and scared and imperfect, and being loved anyway. The town had rejected her because they couldn't see past her circumstances. Ronan had chosen her because he saw who she actually was, and that made all the difference.